Hey, we're live with episode number 3, OBI, or Ohio Bible Institute podcast, and we're glad you've joined us. We've got Tony Walker here with us again, probably on part 2. This will probably become part 15 as the years go on, but it's good to have you here today, Tony.
Good to be here again.
Here's what I want to do. I want to start out with some scripture. My favorite passage, or favorite book in the Bible is Isaiah, and obviously it's just packed with history and God's love. But God's people sinned. They were under oppression. They were not home. They were being punished for their sin. We know that. We know that it affected them and their generations and the generations after. And at Psalm 107, Psalm 105, 106, and 107 talk about the people praying to God, saying, "Hey, we've sinned, and please bring us back home so we can worship you." So Isaiah 40. The Lord speaks to his people. He says, "Comfort my people." They're in this horrible situation. Life is bad, and there's probably some depression and some loneliness and sadness of. You hear of guys going back to Israel and Nehemiah, and you look at the tears and the things that he probably had for what was going on there and the walls. And these people love their home, and the Lord says, "Comfort them." What do you mean, comfort them with what? They're comforted by the fact that God is who He says He is. And who does He say He is? He says, "Man, these enemies are like a drop in the bucket. They're like dust on a scale." I'm sitting over the horizon looking at people. They're just like grasshoppers. There's nothing. This is not a problem for me to fix.
Exactly.
And when you look at the situation they're in, and you look at what the world is going through, the Lord's sitting back and saying, "I can fix all this if you let me." And so He comforts the people with those words. And that's really kind of where we're going to continue on, because we ended the last podcast with, talking about the needs and the statistics that 80% of people are struggling with some form of mental depression. Suicide rates are on the rise, and those numbers are the same in the church and out of the church, which is staggering. Pastors are lonely and leaving. The numbers we're hearing are it's dumbfounding to see the number of pastors that are leaving. And really, we can't lose them because our pastors are getting older and the replacements are not matching the numbers that are leaving. So this is a serious problem. So if you have just joining us and you have not watched the first 2 episodes, I would encourage you to go back and watch the first 2 podcasts to kind of let you know what we're doing. But the second podcast, episode 2, is your first time here. And we went through some real tough discussion about what's going on. So what we want to do now, Tony, is we want to get into application. So we ended by talking about the Gateway Initiative. So the Gateway Initiative is the program or the process that we're going to use to help resource our people through training and to help them. Help them what? Help them recognize the needs in their own church and their own lives, but also give them a pathway to get the help that's needed. So you are a coach, kind of, in this mentality, a life coach, we would call it, but in the church world. So explain again, real quick, what the Gateway Initiative is, and then we'll talk about some applications and continue this conversation, because I think the Spirit's in this. I think the Lord is in this work, and let's just see where He leads us today. So again, it's good to have you, and let's get into this thing. Talk about the Gateway.
Sure. I'm glad to be back again, Ben. So the Gateway Initiative really is about that doorway, right? It is exactly what it is. It's a gateway. Because we recognize the need that there is in our congregations, whether it's leadership, whether it's congregants, whether it's a community, but there's a need, right? And that we have going on in our society that unfortunately is not finding any resource to truly help. Because again, back to your passage in Isaiah, which is a great passage, because again, absolutely God can fix all these things. Now, sometimes, and I'm going to put a disclaimer out there, right? I'm going to put a disclaimer out there. Sometimes it isn't God miraculously healing the ailment that we have. Sometimes it's having the relationship with that individual to walk with them through that ailment. So we need to understand that just because, someone says, okay, if I come to the Lord, all of a sudden, all of my symptoms are going to disappear. That may not be the case. Absolutely, God can heal everything, but what if His choice is not to? And again, that's the problem that we see in so many circles that goes on with that. And one of the issues that we've got with some of those doctrines that are out there that would teach, well, if the person truly has a right relationship with God, they wouldn't have any of this stuff. That's not biblical. There's nothing biblical in there about that. But the gateway is exactly that. It's a doorway to help folks, number one, recognize the needs and be able to actually help support those people that are in need. Again, whether that's pastor, whether that's parishioner, whether that's someone in the community that comes to the church, because we're seeing a huge amount of people. You go through history, and anytime there has been huge shifts in our civilizations, it has always been the church that gets inundated with people looking for answers. And we're seeing that in the mental health world. We're seeing people going to churches, and unfortunately, our churches are woefully ill-equipped to be able to deal with those issues. Again, there's a stigma that goes with mental illness. The Gateway Initiative is there to, first of all, if you have that immediate need, and someone comes to your congregation, someone comes to your door, someone comes to your service that needs help, absolutely, we want to help you be able to point them to the right direction. Now, as you mentioned, Ben, I am a certified Christian, and I'm going to emphasize that, Christian, which uses biblical resources, life coach, but I'm also a certified master mental health Christian coach as well. So not only am I trained in, the life coaching aspect of things, of being able to use tools and to be able to help with relational issues and things like that, but I'm also specifically trained in a mental health world to be able to recognize needs and also to be able to help support that individual in their care. Again, I don't diagnose. I don't need to diagnose. I have folks, and we have a network of folks that can do that. But many times it's supporting those people, that first responder that is there to be there to help them in their moment of support and to continue the journey with them. That's what the Gateway is going to do. The Gateway is going to, first of all, recognize the need. Then we're going to support them through their journey, whether that's walking alongside them or making sure that they're entrusted to someone who is trained to walk with them. Then we're going to help train people to be able to recognize those needs if they don't feel that they're equipped to recognize those needs or equipped to deal with those needs. So really, it's a threefold thing that we're sort of approaching this with. Is number one is being that first responder, but then being that support network, but then finally being that resource to be able to point folks in the right direction.
That's interesting. I was at a church once where somebody had a heart attack right in the service. And immediately, some of the laymen who were trained started helping, right? And what did they do? Yeah, CPR, whatever, get the defibrillator, and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And then they brought in the ambulance, and the ambulance, what they do? They hooked up the blood pressure machine, and they got him in the ambulance, and then they called ahead. So I kind of picture you as the ambulance, the EMT, the first responder. I like that term because there's a little bit. First responder is not a doctor, obviously, but they do know certain things. They know the vocabulary. They know, hey, this is the signs of a heart attack. Well, the doctor's got to confirm that. Hey, there's the signs of oh man, this person's got whatever. So you can see the signs, the vocabulary, really probably what's going to happen, but you're not going to diagnose them because you're not the doctor.
That's right.
But what you can do is say, hey, I've got an ambulance and I can get you to where you need to be.
Yep.
So that you get better and can come back and minister.
That's right.
And that's the goal because, so let me ask you just a hypothetical. What do you think is going to happen in the next 5 years? We know what's going to happen in the church world if things don't change, as far as people leaving, fixing the pastors. If in 5 years, if we change nothing, we're going to be in a 50% pastor shortage.
That's correct.
That's insane.
It is. It's huge.
And some people say, well, we just need more preachers. I know, but we're not raising them up.
Not
That's a whole nother podcast,
That's right? That's right.
But what happens to the mental health in the church and society if we ignore this in 5 years? Where are we?
So we are at, again, back to what we talked about in podcast 1. We are seeing alarming increases in fatal and non-fatal self-injury. We're seeing alarming increases in self-medication. We're seeing alarming increases in abuse in many realms. So unfortunately, when people are hurting, they react. They either will reach for something that can truly help them, or they're going to reach for something.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, many times that reaching for something is something that doesn't help, that actually exacerbates the condition, makes it worse. Or they reach for something that's not intended for them to use, and unfortunately, damage occurs, sometimes fatal.
So let's pause for just a second, and if somebody's listening to this and they've contemplated suicide, okay, I'm not a doctor, but that's serious. Call 911.
Absolutely.
Go see the doctor right now.
There is a national suicide hotline that is 24 hours a day. It's all over the internet. We will post the number on the podcast, but there is a national suicide hotline that you can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is manned. It is staffed by trained individuals who can help talk you through how you're feeling.
Yeah, and if you are a veteran, you can call the veteran. You can,
absolutely.
You tell them that they've got people trained to do that. I think the number is 988.
Yes.
So
yes.
dial 988.
Just dial 988.
Dial 988.
Yep.
And
if you think medical emergency or another
good.
Emergency, it's 911. But for mental health, it's 988.
And just if you need help, get help.
Yes,
absolutely. It's not worth it. You're
Do not wait.
And you making the decision to get help will actually help others
That's
make
right.
the decision to get help.
That's right.
And, so really, I didn't mean to jump in there, but
no, you're good.
Let's pause.
You're good. It's fine because it's a very sobering statistic that we're seeing. And unfortunately, to your point, if back to your question, if we don't do something, then we will continue to see that increase. And again, we believe wholeheartedly that every life is there for a reason and is loved. Period. Every life is a bona fide creation of God, regardless of what that person's being told sometimes. Sometimes they're being told they're worthless. Sometimes they're being told they don't matter. But that's not the case. The Bible teaches us specifically that God does not create accidents. God does nothing without purpose.
Sure.
So you need to understand that.
Absolutely. And then let's talk, these kids that are struggling in our churches. And I would encourage parents, I call it the camp system. You take them away from the world for a week, and what happens? Man, they're a different person when they come home. It doesn't take but a few days of being in the Word and the Lord getting a hold of them, and you take that cell phone away for a few weeks, it changes their life.
That's right.
One of the best vacations we ever had as a family is I talked to my father and mother-in-law about it, but I just said I didn't want to just sit at home and do presents. We went away.
Yeah.
And I told the kids, hey, you can check your email once a day, but that's it. We read books. We slept till we wanted to sleep. We got up. My son and I got up and went fishing every morning. And you know what we did when we got done? We went back and went to bed.
Yeah.
I think my father-in-law watched like 100 episodes of Andy Griffith. Who cares? But it's the whole idea of just sometimes parents take their cell phones, not to be mean. Say, look, we're going to go out to dinner tonight, and that's not got to be there. Or we're going to go on a couple days vacation. Cell phones have got to stay in suitcases for a while. And just get them away, because I think some of those influences are coming from other people that are lost. They're getting their advice from culture, from society.
Yeah.
Music talks about it. And of course, we know the demonic realm that's trying to kill that, we as pastors could get in and talk about spiritual warfare.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll talk about that in the podcast. But really, they're being attacked. And so, if you feel like you're wanting to hurt yourself, whether you're a child or an older adult, whatever's going on, there is help available. And if you feel like you're kind of depressed, you don't know what to do, let me encourage you with something. You're a Marine. I'm the Army infantry. Okay. And so there's that tough guy mentality, but a lot of guys don't ask for help.
Right.
And don't share their feelings. Let me show you something. Matthew chapter 26, Jesus is getting ready to die, and he's in the garden, and he says to the disciples, they're up there praying, and he took Peter with him and the two sons of Zebedee and began to be sorrowful and very heavy. And then saith he unto them, so Jesus is speaking, he said, my soul is sorrowful, I'm sad, even unto death. Watch with me. He says in verse 39, my Father, is it possible this cup pass from me? He's saying that I am hurting. I'm hurting. I'm sad. I know what's going to happen, and we know the context of that. I mean, he's going to go to the cross. But Jesus opened up to his disciples.
That's right.
And was honest about his feelings.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not one of these like feel good preachers. I
Yeah.
don't like that. I don't think that's what Jesus was doing.
No.
I think Jesus was being honest because he wanted his boys to
Right.
be honest.
Yep.
Later on, you see Peter do the same thing. Man, I'm going fishing.
Right.
I'm just mentally not where I need to be. And then he ultimately, you know the story, that he ultimately comes back
That's
to
right.
the Lord. But Jesus himself shared his feelings.
That's right.
And so he did that because something you and I talked about, he had those disciples with him.
That's right.
He had that group of of men. And when you study the scriptures, you learn that Jesus spent 90% of his time with 12 men. And out of those, the three was like 98%, like Peter, James, and John, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
he spent the majority of his time with three men that he invested in and he was honest with.
That's right.
I'm hungry. I'm tired. I'm sad. I'm sleepy. I'm angry. I mean, he saw what he did at the temple. You saw that he got upset. I mean, he was honest.
That's right.
With his guys.
That's right.
So if Jesus did that, who are you to think as a man, I'm not supposed to share my feelings?
That's right.
That's where the military in me comes in. It's like, man, shut up.
Yep.
Like, I love you, but like, stop.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the scriptures and say, man, if Jesus did that, I can do that. So let's talk about that. Like, guys sharing their needs, almost society says almost like a weakness. I don't think it's a weakness.
No.
I think it's a strength.
It actually is. And that passage is a great passage because it actually shows the heart of really what the problem is. Again, we talked about in the first podcast, we talked about pride.
Mm-hmm.
And we can have a pride issue, but that pride issue is also built on something else, right? Because when you take a look at the words that are used in the New Testament to talk about a relationship with God, talk about a relationship with Christ, when you look at those, when we talk about the idea of Abba Father, for example, when you look at the context of what's being said there, it's talking about having an intimate relationship. Now, I've been in churches before, and I've been around older folks that don't understand some of the Greek and the Hebrew and the Aramaic and Chaldean that we talk about. So they don't really understand the color of the language and what's being said. But what that's talking about is having an intimate relationship with that individual. And in that context, it was God.
Sure.
But do you understand what that word intimacy means, right? Because automatically, because of the world we live in, when I say intimate, automatically people's minds go to an eros love, right?
Yeah.
They go to a physical, sometimes a sexual type of relationship thinking.
That's society.
That's not what the word means. What the word intimate actually means means being vulnerable, allowing yourself to be vulnerable, okay? Now, what's that built on? That's built on the fact that I can look at you and say, I feel safe with you. I trust you, so I can open up and share my heart with you.
That's huge. Trust. Oh,
that's right. That's the issue. At the heart of the issue is a trust issue. I would propose to you that most of the issues that you run into, that I run into, at least when I sit down and talk to someone who's having an issue with their relationship with God, when they talk about, well, I've got a faith issue. When we sit down and we talk through it, it's not a faith issue. It's a trust issue. Their trust has been broken. They've been violated. They were allowed themselves to be vulnerable to someone and someone hurt them. Church abuse, spouse abuse, psychological abuse. We live in an abusive world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an abusive world. And unfortunately, that abuse collects. We know from trauma that trauma isn't just one huge, cataclysmic event that all of a sudden shifts us. It's those micro traumatic events that occur that build up over time. And finally, you get to a point to where the rubber band snaps, right? So the thing is, the abuse that we go through in this world, folks, it's not going to go away.
Yeah.
Jesus told us very specifically, in this world, you will have tribulation. There will be trouble in this world. Suffering is not something that will go away. And just because you go to church 3 days a week doesn't mean that you won't suffer.
If you go to church.
That's right. If you go to church.
Mercy.
You're not going to be exempt from suffering. But the thing that we have is we have a relationship with a God who is able to help us and encourage us and help us walk through that suffering in a journey of peace.
Oh, yeah.
Finding a place where we can trust Him is huge. A lot of times the issues that folks have with not wanting to bare their soul, so to speak, they have a trust issue. They don't want to be vulnerable because somebody's hurt them. Yeah. And that's the heart of the matter.
Yeah, and what we have to realize is that it's sin.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all sinners, and
All
we
of
all
us.
fail.
All of us.
And confession, I was mad at someone one time, probably more than once, but I unloaded on somebody else and
Mm-hmm.
just tore this other guy down. And I'm gonna tell you, that night I didn't sleep. The Lord
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
I got a spiritual spanking, and it was hard for me to pick up the phone the next day and say, "Can I talk to you?
Yeah.
I need to apologize." And just lay my heart out. I am so sorry. I should have never done that, and confess to that person, because I don't want to lose trust.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do those things. And that was a growth and learning for me,
Absolutely.
where the Lord, and so I think
Absolutely.
we got to understand, there is a trust thing, but just because somebody hurts you, number one, doesn't mean it was on purpose,
That's right.
right? It's
That's
nothing.
right.
We're going to train people.
That's
We're
right.
going to take people through what does it mean to help individuals and
Yes.
how to get through that, and we're going to learn. We're going to see
Mm-hmm.
things that maybe we've done. I probably see things you're going to teach, and I'll be like, oh, I won't do that no more. Like,
Yeah.
that's me. Let's fix that moving forward because we want to help. So I am excited, not with the numbers that we're at, but I'm excited that I think the Lord has answered our prayer, given us an opportunity with this Gateway initiative to have a place where people can come confidentially. They can trust the situation and the way that we're going to do this, the system, excuse me, the word I was looking
Mm-hmm.
for, to really get them where the objective is. We want them to be back for two reasons. We want them to be healthy, but we want to ultimately have them help
Mm-hmm.
others. That's what discipleship is about.
That's right.
Disciples who make
That's
disciples, and
right.
so that's where we're at. So let's talk about physically where we're at. We have a location, and when you contact, we'll put the contact information up here in just a moment. But when we have a contact, or somebody contacts you and they said, "Hey, I need to meet confidentially,"
Mm-hmm.
we have a location where they can do that, where that nobody will know where they would meet, but they can meet with you privately.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a female, we'll have to set up some
Yeah,
different
we'll
situations,
set up a
but we
different
can do that.
situation. Sure.
But male, if you want to meet confidentially and say, "Hey, we need this." If it's a female, there's ways that we could do that as
That's
well
right.
for protection,
Mm-hmm.
and understand that we want to do that,
Mm-hmm.
to give them that location. But sometimes it's a phone call.
Correct.
You're not going to record their phone calls
No.
or anything like
No.
that. It can be the starting point. I've already given you somebody that's close to me. They've
Mm-hmm.
talked to you a couple of times on the phone, and so that's given them steps to take and those
Mm-hmm.
things. So we're going to do that. We're going to set up on the website eventually a place to have a contact form.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be coming on our website that we'll put on here. And so as this thing grows, we want to take the Gateway initiative and really push it to our people, because we want to see not only, we're not doing this for a podcast or for a
Right.
website. We're doing this to help people know the Christ of the Bible.
Right.
And what do I mean? Well, you're talking to church people. I am. But sometimes we can get distracted and forget who the Christ of the Bible is.
Mm-hmm.
He can help you.
Mm-hmm.
He does love you. And that there is coming a day
Yeah.
where there will be no more mental health
Mm-hmm.
problems. I mean, we will be healed, all of us.
That's right.
There will be no more COVID and stress and all
That's
those
right.
things you talked about, like in
That's
Mark
right.
13, all that stuff.
Yeah.
We won't have to deal with that no more.
That's right.
We won't have to deal with an election anymore,
That's right.
right? I mean, it's goodness gracious. So this is exciting,
Yeah.
Tony.
It is.
Really
It
is.
is. Because again, I think for some reason, and I don't know why we do this, at least in this part of the world, we for some reason disassociate the Christ of the Bible from my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Well, God can take care of my bills. God can take care of my spouse. God can take care of my job. God can take care of my pastor, or God can take care of my congregation. But for some reason, he doesn't care about my depression. He doesn't care about my anxiety. He doesn't care about my abusive spouse. He doesn't care about these things that I'm dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And so for whatever reason, we don't understand him in that context. That was one of the biggest steps of my journey, was not understanding that context, and understanding now that he's the God of all things under
That
his
would be an
feet.
interesting study. The man that his friends let him down through the roof.
That's right.
And you got the leper.
That's
trying to
right.
get to
One
the
of my
pulpit.
favorite stories.
And
Yes.
I just thought about it. It'd be interesting because, Jesus, the first thing he does is says, "Hey, your sins are forgiven."
That's right.
And mentally, he probably was like, because he's been told his whole life,
Yes.
it's your fault.
That's
It's
right.
your parents' fault.
That's right.
It's everybody else's
That's
fault.
right.
And Jesus is like, bro, I forgive you.
Again, what did what? And again, that's the context of many times of what what mental illness was in the Bible,
I
right?
have to study that.
Because again, you had the individual who came to the Lord, they brought to the Lord, and the Lord healed him. He was blind from birth. And the question was, what sin did he commit?
Mm-hmm.
See, again, that was, they wanted to put a blame and say, well, what did he do wrong?
Yeah.
What did his parents do wrong?
Yeah.
Jesus didn't even address it.
Yeah.
So no, this is what we're dealing with.
That's interesting. I'm gonna have to go back and read that again because now my brain's turning.
Yeah,
on it.
yeah. You look at those.
I don't want the podcast to go for 2.5 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, you look again, but you look at the situation. That's why I said it's one of my favorite stories, of the fact that the fellas is actually his brothers letting him down through the hole in the roof. Again, that's the context of coaching, is being that brother that's not afraid to pick up the litter, carry him where he needs to go, and let him down where he needs to get to.
Yeah, I mean
that's the whole point.
Did what any.
That's right.
And that's, I wonder. We've talked about one-on-one, but we're trying to get fellowship among the churches and stuff. But really, a group of pastors can help somebody.
Absolutely.
A group of people can help.
Absolutely.
Somebody.
I've had a couple conversations with a couple good pastors from up north that really their heart is their people. And really, I envision, at least at some point, and I continue to pray about it, as a network of churches that, north, south, central, that are trained and equipped, and places that people can go, that they can be those places that are safe places.
Oh yeah,
right?
this thing is going to blow up.
Just you really need, because again, people need to understand the Christ of the Bible is a Christ that's there for everyone.
Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask some more questions about some scripture. What are some scriptures that people can, maybe start reading if they're they're struggling. I know you've got your Bible there, and let's talk through that. But go ahead and get your email and your contact. How can people contact you?
Sure.
So let's talk through some of that stuff.
So there's a couple ways, and like Ben mentioned, we're setting up some other contact methods. But right now we do have a website, actually a web presence, I will say, which is it's Gateway at Ohio FWB, right? So you can go there. We have email there, so you can drop a line there. It's working email. So again, if you confidential, it's strictly confidential. Ben doesn't even read it. It comes straight in. And so it's a confidential email place that I monitor. So it's there. Also, you can reach out. One of these is actually, I'll give you my private coaching practice number, which is 567-233-3109. You can, again, reach me there personally if you want to. And those are my typical open office hours. If it's a crisis, or if you're in a severe situation that you need support immediately, again, if it's self-injury, please call 988. That can't be stressed enough. But if it's an issue that you just want to talk through, I will go ahead and give you my cell, which is 567-876-9164. And feel free, again, you can text, you can call, whatever. I monitor email through my phone as well. So that way, if you drop a line, I'll be sure to get it, and I'll get back with you as soon as possible. Or again, if you can't get a hold of me, or don't know how to get a hold of me, or something comes up, then you feel free to get a hold of Ben. Ben can forward it on, whatever we need to do there. But those are the primary contact methods. Again, as Ben mentioned, we're looking at putting up some forms on the portal, some different things there as well.
And we'll put those links on here as well. But you can send questions at ohiofwb.org as another email that you can send in for that. So there's multiple ways that you can say, hey, I would like more information. I would encourage you not to send private information or anything over those emails.
That's correct.
This is just a way to connect.
That's right.
Once somebody connects with you or your team, then there's confidentiality there. But I don't read your emails.
Yep.
I set that up, but I just let everybody know I don't get those emails on my computer.
Yep.
So you have them. And then again, follow these resources, the 988 or the 911 if you have to, because that's why they're there.
Yeah.
Let's end by talking about the Bible. What are some ways that we can encourage our folks today? We went through some different scriptures. What's some things that the Lord's laid on your heart to maybe share with the folks this morning?
So I really want to talk about probably one of my primary pieces of scripture, which is 1 Kings chapter 19. And the reason I really go a lot to 1 Kings chapter 19 is because this is probably one of the greatest, if not one of the greatest Old Testament prophets, which was Elijah. And when people think about prophets and prophecy and really, getting in there and fighting for the Lord, the prophets of Baal and all those great stories that we hear about, those accounts of, we think of Elijah. And we think about those huge victories, right? But at the same time, we also aren't introduced until 1 Kings chapter 19 to the Elijah that suffered with mental health, which Elijah had a depression problem. And when you take a look at 1 Kings chapter 19, the reason that this is a hallmark passage for me is this is the one that I learned early on in my pastorate, that it's okay to not feel good. It's okay to actually not feel well. And nobody's going to judge any different. Matter of fact, God is going to embrace that and help you through that. And that's how I learned. It's through this passage. Because as I mentioned, when I was young in the pastorate, there was none of this. There was no resources there for pastors that, and I struggled. Early on, it was big. It was a huge adjustment. I mean, I thought, okay, yeah, I've got this. I got the bull by the horns. I can do this. And then I got in and started getting, lambasted more or less with different things. And it's like, Lord, what am I doing? I feel inadequate. I feel like I can't do this. I feel like I'm undertrained. I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. And the Lord was right there. Be still. Just be still. Because again, you go through this passage, 1 Kings chapter 19, and I encourage you to read the whole passage, the whole chapter. Because in that you're going to find, first of all, Elijah's recognition that there was an issue. Now, unfortunately, when you look at verse 4, you see Elijah recognized he had a need. But what Elijah did is what we so many times do. Elijah ran from the problem. Elijah tried to hide. You go back, we talked about in the first podcast, we talked about Adam and Eve, right? Whenever they sinned. What's the first thing they did? They went and hid, right? Because that's what man's nature is. Man's nature is to hide, to separate, because that's unfortunately what we feel is the right thing to do, but it's the worst thing we can do. Because in a situation where we don't feel good mentally, where we don't feel well, the worst thing we can do is isolate. But that's exactly what Elijah did. Elijah isolated. We need not do that. We need to actually go through. The next step was then the Lord came to him, and the Lord prepared for him food, and Lord prepared for him the next remedy or the next support, which was rest. Go eat. So he went and ate. Verse 5, he went and he slept. Verse 6, he saw the food. Again, he goes and does the same thing. The Lord prepares food. The Lord tells him, go eat. Again, self-care is huge. Yeah. Self-care is huge. We must take care of ourselves. We can't continue to go. We're not Energizer bunnies. We can't continue to, no copyright infringement there, but we can't, we can't continue to go and go and go and expect that we're just going to continue to go. We can't do that. Yeah. The Lord recognizes these needs, folks. He recognizes we need rest, we need food, we need to take care of ourselves. And he encourages that here. Yeah. That's when I learned that. Then I found out the huge moment, the epiphany. Whenever all these things, the wind, the fire, the earthquake, the rock splitting, the noise, and all the stuff that went with that, the Lord personally to Elijah in a still small voice, here I am. Yeah. Here I am. To realize that we're never alone. Oh, yeah. Is huge. Yeah. We're never alone because, again, we live in a world today that wants us to feel alone, but we're never alone. That's the thing. Sure. We serve an omnipotent, omnipresent God who is everywhere. What did he say in Psalms? If I ascend into heaven, you're there. Yeah. If I make my bed in hell, you're there. Yeah. There's nowhere we can go that he's not. Yeah. And the devil wants us to forget that. The devil wants us to feel isolated. He wants us to feel alone. Because again, what happens when you pluck fruit off a tree? It's going to wither. That's right. If you're disconnected, you're going to wither. We need to stay connected. That's what this is about. This is about staying connected and realizing the source of our strength.
So let me flip it on you, though, too. I would look at this, and everything you said, 100% spot on, is two things that stood out. He says, you need to eat because the journey's too great.
That's right.
Look, I would say to these pastors and these people, I need you. I need you to do your part. We have a mission in front of us that's bigger than all of us.
Absolutely.
How are we going to reach the 1040 window? How are we going to reach people groups? How are we going to get new missionaries and churches out there? How are we going to do it? through what God does through you. It is God's
Yes.
people serving God and trusting Him. And God gives you what you need for that journey.
That's
if you let
right.
Him. Because He said, and He ate, and the Lord used that meat to
That's
feed
right.
him for 40 days.
That's right.
He gave him the strength. Yes, for 40 days. That may have been what he had,
That's
but
right.
it was enough.
That's right.
God gave him what he needed
That's right.
to keep that journey. It's powerful.
It is. It's
And
huge.
So the Gateway Initiative is not the answer.
No.
The OBI is not the answer. Christ is the answer. He is what we need.
That's right.
And these are tools that we're going to use to help our people come back to the scriptures and let them know you are needed. You are not alone. You are part of something way bigger than anything you can imagine.
That's right.
And there is no telling what God can do.
That's right.
Through the advancement of his kingdom, if people will just listen.
That's right.
And look, we're gonna say this again. I understand, and I 100%, as you said, know. Sometimes that takes help. Sometimes you have to get those mental heart caths. Sometimes you have to get that medicine. You have to get the professionals. We have those resources to get you to those people. And we want to make sure that you understand that it's okay to get that help. But from this point, from the day that you've listened to this podcast, begin praying for this. Pastors, begin praying for Brother Tony and his ministry. Pray for what we're doing through the OBI, because we're wanting to reach as many pastors as we can in churches to get this information to. And because we want to do our part. It may be silly, but it's like the kid who started throwing the starfish back in the ocean. Man, there's too many. And he said, well, not to that one. It mattered to that one.
That's right.
We're going to try to get as many as we can.
That's right.
Because the journey's great. The journey's great. But also, I don't preach end times, but because there's always argument. I know it's coming.
Yeah.
But it could be soon.
That's right.
We could be at the end.
We could.
Absolutely. And we just got to be right on that.
Yeah.
So, excuse me. I would also encourage you. There's a song out there. Stephen Curtis Chapman sings it, "Be still and know that He is God." Put that on YouTube playlist. Maybe we'll come back and have you do a podcast one day on music and entertainment and the things that come into our mind,
right?
How it affects
those windows to the soul.
That's right.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that's an idea. I'm gonna write it down. You're going to be here for like 47 straight podcasts.
That's all right.
No,
that's all right.
but that's good. But go home and listen to that. Be still and know that He is God, because that's the key.
Yeah,
set yourself away. And again, if you're lonely, if you're depressed, if you feel like you have a major need, a medical need, you feel like this is it, whatever, you there's a reason you're here. Call those numbers, 988, 911, whatever. Get the help you need. But reach out to Tony through the Gateway Initiative, and I'm telling you, I'm looking forward to what God's going to do through this ministry.
Absolutely.
So, man, it's been good to have you, man.
It's been great to be here.
Yeah, so just keep praying for the Ohio Bible Institute podcast. There's a lot more to come, and we will definitely have you back. And we will announce through the website and through some other information through the Ohio Bible Institute on the trainings that are going to be coming through Brother Tony, and I'm sure you'll have individuals you could bring in.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
To do this. Yep. So we want to build these resources for our people, and so God bless you. Remember, what does the Bible say? And will I obey? Click that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next podcast. God bless you.